This is Lambert and Trappa. Welcome to our gathering dedicated to commemorating the life and work of Mark Johnson, recently departed and thoroughly beloved. Let me just start with a brief introduction to Mark Johnson. He is a practitioner of Tai Chi and Qigong for over 50 years. He started with Master Huan Ni. He was one of his devout students until Master Ni kicked him out in the early 90s. And since then, he kind of struck out on his own and became a master in his own right. That also was the time, I think, when he was working with a renowned filmmaker, Francis Ford Coppola, and trained movie stars. He literally was invited to the set of not just one, but two motion picture production. One was Rumblefish, another one was Outsiders, where he trained movie stars including Tom Cruise, Nicolas Cage, Mickey Rourke, Patrick Swayze, Ralph Macchio, a few others. Almost everyone who was involved in those movies became a movie star, including Mark Johnson himself, because he produced not one, not two, but three best-selling Tai Chi DVDs. Tai Chi for seniors, Tai Chi for women, and Tai Chi for healing. Combined, they sold over 750,000 copies. So he obviously was probably one of the most best-selling Tai video stars. He was supremely good looking back then, so much so that he could be a movie star himself. He was also not the most humble man that I know, to put it mildly. However, he was one of the most fun people I've been around. Great sense of humor, constantly making jokes and pushing everyone's buttons in a humorous sort of way, asking them what they thought of him, as well as telling them what he thought of them. And in general, he was an amazing human being. So that's one of the reasons why I want to celebrate his life and his work. Another thing that also is fascinating about Mark Johnson is that you wouldn't guess, but he was a judge of Tai Chi tournaments. And not just any Tai Chi tournaments where they just do forms. No, he was judging push hands. Now, you would think that he would be a master of push hands because he was judging push hands. No, for the entire time I knew Mark, and I have known him for at least 25 years or longer, I've never seen him do push hands. He watched me do push hands with some people and made some comments, but actually he never seemed to demonstrate his push hands. I invited one of his few, if not the only apprentice, Chris Anderl, to come and join us today. If he shows up, then I will make sure to ask him, did Mark actually do push hands, or he was just judging others? He certainly had this knack of having no problem sharing his opinions. You know, some people have really strong filters. They are constantly censoring themselves. Not Mark Johnson. He did not censor himself, not to my knowledge. And of course that pushed some people's buttons, but that also enabled him to be an excellent judge of other people. I don't know if he was sometimes harsh on them, but he certainly was fair on most occasions. At one point he looked at me and he said, "Well, do you know that my daughter, Sita, told me that you look like a mad scientist. He wants to take over this whole world. I was like, no, I think Sita must have seen too many movies like Superman. He's like, no, no, she looked into your soul. I said, where did she look into my soul? She saw the picture on the cover of your book. Ah, okay, well, that explains it. Anyway, that was interesting because sure enough, soon he produced his own book called Life as Play. At one iteration or another, there were, I think, several editions of that book. There was the Life as Divine Play, but I think he dropped the word divine at some point and just left it as play. And I think it's because he wasn't really into the divine theology. It's like when I talked to Mark Johnson about this, he always made jokes about how people are all hung up on religion, and so he and I actually hit it off really well because I also consider myself spiritual but not religious. Mark Johnson always joked about me, how I go by my spiritual name. He goes, I go by my spiritual name, Mark Johnson. And I said, okay, well, that sounds kind of cute. That was also the time when he and I hit it off because we were involved in National Qigong Association. He was actually one of the founders, one of the 12 founding fathers of National Qigong Association in America. The original person whose idea that was to create NQA actually was Jim McRitchie. He kind of spearheaded the idea of creating National Qigong Association and then pulled together some of the renowned masters like Mark and Roger Youngke and Michael Wynn and a few others. They kind of cobbled together this whole organization dedicated to Qigong. And of course, they invited me to participate. Later, I joined the board of directors and eventually served as the vice president of that organization. And the idea of that organization is that it was supposed to bring people together and make everyone feel good about practicing Qigong or Tai Chi. Sure enough, there were some interesting events happening. There was also a lot of office politics that happened at the NQA. I'm not going to go there. But Mark and I were in alignment about how things were going at the NQA. He and I both felt like it went into a wrong direction eventually. For what it's worth, we participated in a number of conferences that National Qigong Association organized, including a couple of conferences in Portland when I lived in Portland. Actually, more than a couple, I think 3 conferences in Portland, a couple of conferences in the Denver area, in Minnesota, in the Washington, D.C. area, Lake Geneva in Wisconsin, in California, upstate New York. So I've been to a bunch of those conferences. Mark was always there, and his presentations were the most fun because he was hilarious. He was always making jokes about Qigong and Tai Chi and all the techniques and teachers and mumbo jumbo that people come up with. He also was very kind of a reverent teacher himself. And so that created that sense of endearment that I certainly felt towards him. And I think that's what he felt towards me because I'm an irreverent teacher as well. As you've seen probably on more than one occasion, on 1 or 2 occasions I would drop an F-bomb here and there or make some inappropriate jokes. Why not? I'm producing my own show, so nobody is going to tell me to cut it off. And then there is also the sense of freedom of speech. Mark definitely enjoyed that freedom and maybe even took advantage of it on some occasions. I certainly take advantage of the opportunity to speak freely as well, because this is an opportunity to express what is really on your mind. If you constantly censor yourself, you are stifling the flow of energy, literally creating energy blockages in your system. And when you create energy blockages, they affect your health because without energy blockages, energy flows freely, exactly where it needs to flow. And when it doesn't flow, it stagnates or it creates deficiency. And Mark did not suffer from deficiency. He was fun, energetic, and even though he was probably about 25 years older than me, we were also having a great time. Whenever we would get together, I would visit him and we would share some experiences and some practices. And of course, I also visit his student and apprentice, Chris Anderl, who I hope is going to make it to our gathering today. He showed me a lot of practices that Mark taught him. Some of them are really fascinating and interesting. Some of them are a little strange, but who am I to judge? There is always the opportunity to learn something, and I definitely appreciate opportunities of learning, especially something that Mark Johnson put out, because he was no ordinary Qigong master. He was also proud owner of the website, Qigong.com. I don't know who is going to inherit that website now, but certainly he was no slouch when it comes to having online presence. Created his own publishing company, and as I mentioned, he produced a lot of very successful DVDs. One thing he did not do much was get on with 21st century technology, doing what we're doing right now, video conferencing. However, I managed to talk him into doing a number of interviews, both audio as well as video interviews. And so I have probably the largest collection of Mark Johnson's interviews in the world, even though there are other organizations, including Institute of Noetic Studies, several other organizations that had Mark speak at their conferences and whatnot. I think he was pretty much on each and every one of my summits, or close to every summit that I organized. And I organized a lot of summits. He probably appeared more on my podcast than almost any Qigong master, maybe with an exception of Effie Chow and maybe one or two other Qigong masters. Yeah, we definitely have a world-class collection of interviews with Mark Johnson. And so if you guys are interested in receiving access to those interviews, just send me an email and I will send you to the right YouTube channel. I have a number of YouTube channels where you will be able to enjoy them. And also, of course, we have Mastery Dojo website that is the largest library in the world of interviews with Qigong masters. MasteryDojo.com. And I see Rebecca, maybe this is Rebecca Cully, who just joined us. Please show your face. If you're Rebecca Cully, I would love to give you the mic to share about your adventures in Tibet and China with Mark Johnson. That would be wonderful. However, if it's not the right Rebecca, that's fine too. We will move on.
Hello, Lama. This is Matt Nielsen. I studied with Mark for a long time. He was almost like a father to me. I think I hung out with him almost every day for about 3 or 4 years.
I
He,
should do
he,
that.
he was a kick in the ass. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we got into some serious confrontations, but I've never met anybody. His heart was so great, which is what I always remember him for. He was always there for you and always in support of you. He may criticized you to the point where you felt you were smaller than an ant, but when you needed something, he was there for you and he would support you. So I have the deepest appreciation for him. I miss him And, I live near Santa Rosa, so I used to visit him quite frequently. And then he got put in a home, and I never saw him after that. He was down in the Mid Peninsula, something to that
He was in
effect.
Santa Rosa, wasn't he? Or was he
He
in a
was.
different home?
Well, at the very end, for the last year or two, he was put in some kind of a caretaking facility.
Yeah, the last year
Yeah.
or two, he definitely was not doing so great.
Well, it
Having
was after
family,
the aircraft accident,
screwed it.
really. Yeah, that's right. That sent him downhill. But
Yeah.
I have so many adventures, so much fun with that guy.
To share
Eh,
adventures with Mark, please.
well, I don't know. He used to fly airplanes, right? Ultralights.
Yeah, I used to do the same.
Yeah. And so I was an aircraft mechanic at one point. So he
Oh,
had me work on his stuff for him. But I would go hang out with him when he would go fly. And then he would bring his daughter, and a daughter would bring her friend up. And so we'd all go with them on the weekends to go flying.
hmm.
And there was this one dirt field that's just south of Petaluma. Oh God, he got really pissed off. He had a Mercedes sedan. I was a crazy kind of a driver. And so I was trying to impress his daughter and her friend. And so I'm spinning donuts on the dirt field, right? And the thing's getting all just dusted and totaled and everything. But Mark would be flying in. He'd fly right in over the top of your head. So
Oh
you'd
yeah.
stand there and he'd go, like that and that kind of stuff. But anyway, so he didn't really get that mad. And, it was funny. He let me drive his car and all kinds of stuff. I restored a vehicle for him.
Ah,
In fact, he
that's
had
cool.
a 1961 Comet, I think. Yeah,
Oh.
something like that. But anyway, it was a black Comet, looked like a Batmobile. And then he gave it to his daughter, Sita. A
So you
lot of,
said
a
that
lot.
you were spending time studying with him. What did you learn?
First thing that I learned was eight treasures, which is a practice done by the Knee family. And I did that for several years. So that took him 1 year to teach me. I think I learned one movement per week. It's 32 movements. And then I learned earth style and heart style Tai Chi, which is also from the Knee family.
Chi. What's the hard
Yeah,
style Tai
heart
Chi?
style. Different Tai Chis can energize different levels. There's the one where the earth is obviously your core energy. Then you got your heart energy, and they call the top one infinity Tai Chi. That one you sort of have to be approved by the Grand Master before you can learn it. But anyway, I can't do any of them anymore. I haven't done that stuff for so long. But I did learn it. I was practicing it all the time. And did a lot of I Ching with him. He taught me how to use the sticks with I Ching. Read through several I Ching books with them, Tao Te Ching, and just watching movies and being eating ice cream until he got pre-diabetic. Every weekend we go out and get a crap load of ice cream, but I think he ate ice cream every night.
And watch the cage fights.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know when he started doing that, but he was a boxer or junior level boxing. He was in that league. So I remember the boxing earlier. MMA didn't come on until maybe 2000. I didn't really like cage fighting too much. I mean, I was more into the art form. I'd rather learn long fist or Wing Chun. But Mark, he was into that. He loved it. No.
Just like I was talking earlier, he judged push hands tournaments. I don't actually remember seeing once him doing any push hands. Did he actually do any push hands with you or any other students?
I never did push hands with them. I think he had some familiarity with it. I used to go to the tournaments with them too. Down at Berkeley is where that was.
Okay. Did you compete?
No, I didn't compete. I only watched and I knew other people. I don't do push hands myself, but they did Tai Chi forums as well.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for sharing
You're
this really
welcome. I wouldn't miss it. Mark was a big part of my life, and I have the greatest appreciation and respect for him.
fascinating is that he was also quite a philosopher. When I got to know him a little bit more, he was talking to me about all types of things about Taoism and about Buddhism and about Hinduism. Apparently, he had quite a bit of exposure to all of these Eastern religions. Plus, he also was into integral studies with Ken Wilber, or at least he was maybe.
Yeah. I remember I
And
went to groups with him on that. Yeah.
he was talking quite a bit about the various philosophical topics with me, and I was like, well, there aren't that many people that I come across that are capable of maintaining an intelligent conversation on rather esoteric topics for long enough. And Mark could very easily maintain intelligent conversation, even though he would sometimes try to throw you off balance. That was kind of his style of debate.
Yeah. He was into holotropic breath work as well.
Oh, yeah, I met Stan Groff right around the same time as I met Mark. I think it was the same weekend, actually. The National Qigong Conference in Wilsonville, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland, in 2000. That's where I met Mark. And then I hung around after the conference and ended up helping some older guy move sound speakers. And they were just tremendous. And I was like, what is this for? Are you doing some kind of concert? He's like, no, this is for holotropic breath work. Do you know who I am? I'm like, no idea. Who are you? Stan Groff. Oh, okay, nice to meet you. So that was kind of interesting. I did not see Stanislav Grof and Mark actually crossing their paths, but maybe they knew each other. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he studied with him a couple of times.
That was definitely a great way to see what national Qigong conferences were all about when the conference came to my neck of the woods because I was living in Portland at that time and the conference just fell in my lap. They asked me if I wanted to teach. I was like, okay, it's an opportunity, so I'm not going to miss it. And then, of course, I attended a variety of other workshops. And by far, the workshops that Mark presented were the most interesting and definitely most hilarious.
Yeah, that's right. He was a funny guy. What year was that?
I think it was 2000. There were two conferences that NQA had in Portland, 2000 and 2002. And then another one came much later, maybe 2012 or something.
Yeah, I met Mark in 2003. I went to one conference. It was in Pacific Grove or Monterey. What's the
Oh,
name of that?
yes, Monterey.
Silmar? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I met you there. And then Roger Yanka, everybody. I think Bruce K. Francis was even around back then.
I don't know if Bruce Francis was at that conference, but it was in the back
Oh,
of
I,
Jerry Allen Johnson's.
yeah, right. He lives out in that Monterey Pacific Grove area.
I actually lived also not far from there in Carmel Valley. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah,
Way
yeah.
back when Clint Eastwood was the mayor of the city.
Yeah, right. But I don't think Jerry Allen Johnson was at that conference. That I don't
No, he
remember.
actually had some friction with NQA. His senior student, Bernard Shannon, was also heavily involved and was, if not president, chairman of the National Qigong Association for a while.
Yeah, I
Dr.
remember him.
Michael Mayer, it's so great to see you. Feel free to unmute yourself. I would love to hear your perspective. We are sharing stories about Mark Johnson and shooting shit about National Qigong Association conferences. Would love to hear your stories.
Mark was just one of the greatest alive, soulful, humorful people. I just love seeing him at all the NQA meetings where he's had great connections. He was a spark in life and such a deep soul.
Yeah, there was something about him that you could tell that he is not faking it. Like he's for real.
Exactly.
And if couldn't do some things, well, he would admit it. Oh, I don't know this, or I can't do this.
That's
If,
right.
at least he was not pretending to be somebody else.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And it was really fascinating. I remember he used to joke about how he went by the spiritual name of Mark Johnson.
That's a good one. I'm not going to be able to stay too long because I'm teaching a class, but I just had to honor
Oh,
his memories.
well, I would love to ask you a little bit more about your experiences with Mark because we're sharing what we remember of him. Would you?
Just every time I ever connected with him, he was a spark of realness, authenticity, depth. He wasn't afraid to criticize something, be real about something, and just every encounter I had with him was real.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's also one of the things that rubbed some people a little bit wrong about him, but he didn't care. He just marched to his own drummer, as they say.
Uh, that's the perfect way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to see you, and I hope that you're doing well. Let's connect perhaps more privately when time is right for you.
That would
I
be
would love,
great.
I would love to touch base. So
Great. I'm
great to
going to
see you.
stay for another 5 minutes and just listen to what other people have to say. I just want to be in the Mark Johnson space.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if Chris has joined us. No, he hasn't. I invited Mark's one of the few, if not only, devout apprentice, Chris Anderl, to join us. He's been texting me back and forth saying, "Oh, but probably nobody wants to hear my opinion." I said, "Yes, we want to hear your opinion, to make your opinion known." But I will just share a little bit more of my experience with Mark. One of the things that I was really puzzled by is, at least in the later years, maybe in the last decade or so, he was talking about Andromeda, and he was talking about some extraterrestrial civilizations. Now, for a time being, I thought he fell off the rocker, but maybe he was onto something. He was definitely critical of the way that human civilization has been developing on Earth. And he was like, this civilization is so pointless. There's no point to even try to save it. So I'm just going to go to Andromeda. Well, he's probably on his way. And at the same time, when he was talking about civilization, I felt that there was some attempt to share what he knew with the people who were ready to receive what he had to share. What he had to share was often quite profound, and some of it was esoteric knowledge, meaning actually knowledge that is supposed to be given to the initiated people only. And I'm not sure if he was always diligent in initiating the people into esoteric circle first. He sometimes would just kind of blurt it out, and some people were either off put or perhaps just went right over their heads, this esoteric knowledge. It didn't go over my head because I've been around the block a couple of times and studied with some of the best spiritual teachers I could find. So Mark's wisdom was not lost on me. And one of the things that, at least I could say, he was very much into working with shadow. Shadow is that aspect of our consciousness that often is swept under the rug or disavowed, like we pretend, oh, I don't have that side of me. Well, of course, Dr. Mayer can explain a lot better than me what shadow work is because he's a psychologist. Thank you, Michael. Would you elucidate what shadow work is that Mark was trying to talk about on numerous occasions?
Well, shadow work in Jungian psychology is the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. But the way I like to look at it is when we're doing Tai Chi and Qigong, it's not just a spiritual practice, it's also a soulful practice. And so when you're in your body and your energy is running, all of a sudden you hit into something of, wait a second, I'm not feeling so good. My heart's feeling heavy today. So whatever those blocks are arising is your shadow, or things that you don't normally face. And so Tai Chi and Qigong is not just a spiritual practice, but it's a soulful practice. It brings up psychological material. And that was there since the ancient Buddhist times, when various meditation postures were used. I call it traditions of postural initiation, and Tai Chi and Qigong are just one. But in old Buddhist times, your issues would come up. They were called klesas. And so your practice was not just there to transcend and to get high, but to transmute various different issues. Most people do not think about Tai Chi and Qigong as shadow work. So I'm really glad that Lama Tantrapa brought that up. Mark and I used to have loads of conversations about these kinds of things because I knew him for whatever, maybe 20 or 30 years or something, ever since he helped to have me teach at the NQA, doing the keynote back 127 years ago. But in any event, we would have loads of conversations about the depth elements of the shadow elements that arise when doing Tai Chi and Qigong practices. And I couldn't talk with very many people about that kind of thing.
Exactly. So that's what I also pointed out, that Mark could intelligently maintain conversations on some esoteric knowledge that most people can't. And I'm sure that you can. So I guess the two of you connected very well on that frequency. That's wonderful. Yeah, and of course, there's a number of other things that Mark was teaching. There was a lot of Chinese arts that he was into. As Matt pointed out, Qing, for example, was one of the aspects, but he was doing all kinds of things: calligraphy, face reading, all kinds of other strange and unusual things. And of course, geomancy, also known as feng shui. There was a number of conversations that we had about how Qigong, for example, can be perceived as a feng shui for the human body. And that was, again, an esoteric way of talking about Qigong, because not very many people in Qigong circles actually even think about it this way. And then diving deeper into Tao Te Ching, he was definitely into all types of Taoist esoterics. Maybe not as deeply as, let's say, Mantak Chia goes, but he definitely dove quite deep, and perhaps that was one of the reasons why he could not actually stay with Master Ni. I don't know exactly what transpired between those two, but yeah, he got kicked out of Ni school. And I think that was actually for the better, because that pushed him to become a master in his own right. Otherwise, he would have always been Master Ni's apprentice, and he would never become lineage holder, because there was Mao Xing Ni and Dao Xing Ni, who basically inherited both Yosan University and the Ni lineage of Qigong and martial arts. So I think that was the opportunity for Mark, even though at the time he did not perceive it as such. Just like for me, there was a great opportunity when I get pushed out of the National Qigong Association, thanks to then president of that association, Jampa Stewart. I was vice president, he was president, and we just had enough friction, or I think it was more like backstabbing personally. So I left the association and ended up going to the Worldwide Federation and working with Dr. Effie Chow. So there's definitely a big difference when we experience challenges, when we experience some setbacks. That's when we actually need to switch our perspective and perceive them from a different point of view them as learning opportunities, or view them as opportunities for growth and development. And that was one of the things that Mark definitely helped me with, the debacle with the National Qigong Association, but also a variety of other circumstances, including his own rather tragic airplane accident when he was the passenger and the guy who was flying it actually ran into a building. ultralight airplane obviously did not destroy the building, it just got destroyed itself. They pulled Mark out of the wreck of that airplane and literally had to reconstruct his face. He was a very good looking guy before that and not so good looking after because he had a lot of tissue and whatnot. And they also had to put the titanium plate instead of bone in his forehead. So that was kind of bizarre and strange looking. He kind of looked like a Klingon after that, if you know what I mean. He also, of course, experienced some degree of traumatic brain injury as a result of that airplane accident, and his cognitive and memory capabilities were impacted. But he was still quite sharp, surprisingly. He said, "This gave me an opportunity to practice the highest form of Qigong." I said, "Okay, tell me more." He said, "Doing nothing. I was just lying in bed in the hospital doing exactly that." I was like, "What's so special about it?" He's like, "Oh, you try to do nothing, being awake and do nothing." I was like, "Well, that would be a little boring, wouldn't it?" He's like, "Yeah, but I wasn't bored. I was practicing." So he was that kind of guy who would just turn a lemon into lemonade and at the same time making jokes about it. That also was one of the connecting points between him and I, because I also had a number of accidents, not airplane accidents, but landing with a parachute kind of accidents or rollover accidents in the car or being blown up by landmines in the military or being shot at and all kinds of other things. And you probably don't know a lot of people who got kidnapped. Well, I actually got kidnapped in Ukraine, so that was an opportunity for me to learn how to perceive everything as a lesson instead of a problem. And we definitely connected because Mark was one of those people who also perceived problems as lessons instead of setbacks. Oh, I see Chris Anderl says that he can't make it. Well, too bad, Chris. Lost opportunity to talk about your teacher. If there's anybody who would like to unmute yourself and speak up, I would love to hear what else you would like to say or share whatever you have to share of Mark Johnson. And if there are no additional comments, I want to thank you for being here, for honoring my old friend, and also we are getting any younger, so we can only hope that other people would honor us in similar ways. Anyway, I want to send blessings to my old friend Mark, and I look forward to seeing you again when we have opportunity to meet.